To assess your qualifications through the Optometry Council of Australia and New Zealand, OCANZ, you must follow a structured process if you're an overseas trained optometrist seeking to practice in Australia or New Zealand. OCANZ is the designated body responsible for assessing the qualifications of optometrists from overseas to determine if they meet the standards required to practice in Australia and New Zealand. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to assess your documents through OCANZ. The assessment by OCANZ serves two main purposes. Registration. To practice optometry in Australia or New Zealand, you need to have your qualifications assessed and obtain registration through the appropriate regulatory authorities. Skilled migration. The OCANZ assessment is also used as part of the process for applying for a skilled migration visa to work as an optometrist in Australia or New Zealand. Before you begin the assessment process, you need to ensure that you meet the following eligibility criteria. Medical degree optometry qualifications. You should have an overseas qualification in optometry, e.g., Bachelor of Optometry or equivalent. Work experience. You should have relevant clinical experience in optometry, as work experience is often considered during the assessment. English language proficiency. If English is not your first language, you may be required to provide proof of English language proficiency via recognized tests like IELTS, OET, or TOEFL. Prepare the following documents for submission. Optometry degree certificate. A copy of your optometry degree or equivalent qualification. Academic transcripts. Transcripts showing the subjects and courses completed during your optometry program. Clinical experience documentation. Letters or references from employers or supervisors detailing your clinical practice and work experience in optometry. Proof of identity. A copy of your passport or other government-issued identification. English language proficiency. Proof of your English proficiency, e.g., IELTS, OET, or TOEFL, if required. Certified translations. If your documents are in a language other than English, provide certified English translations. To apply for the assessment, follow these steps. Visit the OCANZ website. Go to the official website of the Optometry Council of Australia and New Zealand at https://www.ocanz.org. Create an account. Register an account on the OCANZ portal, which is used to manage the assessment process. Complete the application form. Fill out the online application form, providing all required personal details, educational qualifications, and professional experience. Submit required documents. Upload all required documents, such as your degree, academic transcripts, work experience records, and English language proficiency evidence. Pay the application fee. OCANZ charges an application fee for the assessment process. Complete the payment as part of your online application. Once you submit your application and documents, OCANZ will begin the assessment process. The assessment generally includes primary source verification. OCANZ will verify your qualifications with the institutions that issued them. Comparative assessment. OCANZ will compare your overseas optometry qualifications to Australian and New Zealand standards to determine their equivalency. Examination of clinical experience. Your work experience may be assessed to determine if it meets the requirements for optometry practice in Australia or New Zealand. Competency verification. OCANZ may assess your competency in optometry, which could involve an additional exam or interview, depending on your qualifications. The outcomes of the assessment process can include positive assessment. If your qualifications and experience meet the required standards, you will receive a positive assessment and be eligible to apply for registration with the relevant regulatory authority. Partial assessment. In some cases, your qualifications may partially meet the standards, and you may be required to complete additional steps, such as exams or supervised practice, before you can be fully registered. Negative assessment. If your qualifications do not meet the required standards, you may need to undertake further education or training to meet the Australian or New Zealand requirements. If your overseas qualifications do not directly meet Australian or New Zealand standards, you may be required to follow additional pathways to qualify. OCANZ examination. If necessary, you may be required to sit for the OCANZ examination, which assesses your knowledge and competency in optometry. The examination usually consists of written and clinical components, such as written knowledge exam, a multiple choice or short answer exam covering core optometry knowledge, clinical exam, a practical exam where you demonstrate your clinical skills in assessing and diagnosing patients, supervised practice. In some cases, you may be required to complete a period of supervised practice in Australia or New Zealand before you can be fully registered as an optometrist. Once you receive a positive assessment, you can apply for registration with the appropriate optometry board in the state or territory in which you intend to practice. Registration is required to work as an optometrist in Australia and New Zealand. In Australia, you will apply to the Optometry Board of Australia, OBA, for registration. In New Zealand, you will apply to the Optometrists and Dispensing Opticians Board, ODOB. If you are applying for a skilled migration visa to live and work in Australia or New Zealand, a positive assessment from OCANZ can be used as part of your visa application. You will need to apply for a skilled migration visa, e.g., Skilled Independent Visa Subclass 1 to 89 or Skilled Nominated Visa Subclass 190, based on your qualifications and the successful assessment. If you have any questions or need clarification, you can contact the Optometry Council of Australia and New Zealand for assistance. Website: https://www.ocanz.org. The website provides contact information for inquiries related to the assessment process and other relevant details. The OCANZ assessment process is essential for overseas trained optometrists wishing to practice in Australia or New Zealand. The process involves submitting your qualifications, work experience, and other supporting documents for evaluation. Depending on the outcome, you may need to complete additional exams or supervised practice before being granted full registration. Once you receive a positive assessment, you can apply for registration and proceed with professional practice or migration plans.